Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Mark Hyde.
And Chris Fuller.
And on today's episode, we are talking about how we should respond when the church hurts us. Whether it's church leadership or people in the church, how do we respond, and what does that mean for us? Fuller, you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Thank you for joining us at Real Talk Christian, a place where real Christians talk about real issues impacting the community and the world as it pertains to Christians. Now here are your hosts, Mark Hyde and Chris Fuller.
What's up, Fuller?
I almost never want that intro to end. It's just such a good song.
It makes me happy.
Yeah, it does. It's like takes you away. It's great. It's paradise. That's the name of the song.
Well, let's be honest, dude. You dance the entire song.
Well,
people don't see like your head. Your head doesn't move.
Although I caught you over there doing the same thing.
Well, I bop.
Yeah,
it's a bop.
Did the head weaver.
It's a bop. Well, dude, today is a first for our podcast. Actually, I don't know if you knew this or not, but today is the first time we are drinking coffee sent to us from a listener.
Yay!
Coffee sponsorship.
Not
really. But there's a friend of mine who lives up in Michigan, and they travel all around. They went up to the UP, and they knew we were always talking and asking for coffee because all we want is coffee. And so they sent us back 2 bags, and we're drinking from the first bag because I have to apologize. Our friend Soche and I cracked open the other bag in the office.
I can't believe it.
We drank podcast coffee.
I can't
at church.
Soche, you owe us an episode now.
And that what's that coffee he got? That Reformation coffee or whatever
Yeah, that
it is?
was pretty good. I want to try that.
So you haven't had that coffee yet? See, he keeps talking about it. He doesn't bring it into the office. Like he just whatever.
So he's just a taker. He's not a giver.
Exactly. That's calling you out, Soche. Calling you out. It's so good. But hey, if you want to send us coffee, you can send it our way. Reach out to us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on all the platforms. And please send us coffee because we need to be awake.
That's the only sponsorship we're asking for.
Well,
from our listeners.
I mean, it'll be dope if we can get some money.
That's true.
But we got upgraded equipment, dude. We're we're going. You got us new headphones. We're on a decent. Well, it's new to us mixer.
Right. Yeah.
We tried a new headphone amplifier
that didn't work.
Didn't work. So we're gonna.
Well,
send that back to
it
Amazon.
worked, but it was only one-sided. It was playing in
It was playing the right. Yeah, it was splitting. It was playing the right ear, not the left ear.
I don't understand that.
I don't know either. But either way, we got new stuff, new coffee, good vibes. It is awesome. And for the time that we are right now recording, we actually checked the stats. So we want to thank you listeners before we move on. So make sure I get the number right. So far, it changed. It just changed.
Oh, boy.
We are at 1.3 thousand listens. So 1,300 listens / downloads of the last 15 episodes.
Thank you very much, listeners.
So I pray those are not bots from Spotify that are just skewing our numbers, but that's what we're rolling with. So we've had 15 episodes, 1,300 downloads. So you guys are terrific. So thank you.
I believe when you're listening to this, I believe this will be episode 21.
21, the week after Thanksgiving, if we do it right.
Yeah. So I'm full. I'm just going to go ahead and say that now.
Dude, you were sitting in my driveway eating your dinner before you walked in.
Dude, it was Taco Bell. It was the best.
It's okay. I had a TV dinner tonight because I was rushing, but whatever. But hey, so let's jump into the conversation. So this was a conversation that was actually requested of us to talk about
by one of our
listeners. One of our faithful listeners. So this was not something like normally the content we come up with is just you and me going, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, what's not talked about in Christian circles. So
and then let's
talk about it.
Yeah, so this one was actually sent to us from a listener.
And please, if you have something that you want to have more information on, send it our way. Send a message and say, hey, I want you guys to talk about this. And if it's good, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
If it's something we don't hear very often, definitely we'll talk about it.
Most definitely. So we're looking forward to Christmas and some Christmas episodes and stuff like that too. So
it's beginning to look a lot like...
Well, actually, technically, if this is after Thanksgiving, that's allowed.
Right. See.
But I know in your house,
it's already started.
It started back in
Actually,
June.
We've been watching Christmas movies since August. Yeah. Like every day. And music is like once every couple of days.
I resisted Pentatonic's Christmas today.
What?
I resisted it.
How?
It was up on my Spotify feed. I went, not today, Satan. Nope, not today, Satan.
Be gone.
But either way, so let's jump into this conversation since we've wasted enough of your time already. So Fuller, set it up for us, man.
So our listener that sent us this topic wanted to know how we should respond if the church, and when I say church, I mean fellow believers, leadership within the community that you fellowship with, hurt you. And I thought that was a very interesting topic. It's a topic that really doesn't get discussed much. Most of the time, if there's a church hurt, people leave or are asked to leave, depending on
Or splits or whatever.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of where the background of this comes from, this whole conversation. And, I had never really heard people talk about it much. So I started doing some digging online, and it's internet, so you can believe everything. But
of course.
Here's what I gathered for this podcast. I had a question here where it says, how often do Christians claim to have been hurt by the church or leadership in the church? The information I found came from Barna, BARNA.com. And it's a study back from 2010, so this was 9 years ago. They came out with an article that said the Barna data indicated that 28% of the adult population has not attended any church activities, including services, in the past 6 months. That translates to nearly 65 million adults. When their children under the age of 18 who live with them are added to the picture, the number swells to more than 100 million people. And reading that article a little bit further, a lot of people claimed it was due to some type of church hurt that had happened to them in the past.
So let me ask, this was people who were in the church, involved in the church, and then just didn't go back because something happened.
Right, and this is, again, back in 2010, so I can only imagine that if that trend was continuing, that the number is more than that. Yeah,
and this makes, this is totally off subject. Some of it I wonder, though, is, with a lot of the way the world's going today in terms of homosexuality, transgenderism, feminism.
How many were actually believers that claim this?
well, yeah, kind of, but also just the fact that people are like, oh, the church hurt me, when in reality, it's the fact of, no, the church didn't hurt you. It was an act of sin.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Let's. I read a few articles, and I believe that these articles were written. Some of them were written by actual Christians. Some of them, it just seemed like your fly by day. Hey, I'm going to party and do what I want, but go to church on Sunday, and so I'm mad. But I'll go ahead and read them anyways. I kind of tried to get a slew of different statements that I had read through these articles. So some examples of church hurt that I found. People said I was abused. I was manipulated. No one honored my gifting. Don't I have the right to be happy? The institutional or organized church is messed up. I had a sin and was outcasted from the church. The leadership did not listen to or value my opinion. So, this list could be going on infinite. I know there's a story my wife has told me, and I'll kind of dive into this now, of her childhood church, and I won't say the name because I don't slander fellow believers. I don't believe in it. But this church, the pastor there, would preach from the pulpit. He would say, kids, obey your parents, honor your father and mother, the typical staples that most children that grow up in the church hear growing up. And then in the same week after preaching this sermon, he would have a youth event at his house. And my wife growing up was not allowed to watch anything but PG movies to protect her eyes, kind of what she takes in.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It was great that her parents did that. But she went over for this youth event to the pastor's house, and they wanted to watch Braveheart, which I believe
Braveheart's rated R.
It's rated R.
Even the TV edited version's rated
right.
R. Yeah.
So, which that's crazy that they would play that movie at a youth event, anyways. But
I knew youth groups that played Gladiator, not mine, but because it's just a lot of blood and gore, but no anything else, according to the youth pastor. But anyway, continue.
So continuing on. So when they were playing this movie, my wife and her sister said to the pastor that, hey, our parents said we can't watch these types of movies. And the pastor's response was kind of flooring to me, coming from a pastor. It was something along the lines of, it's okay, just don't tell your parents. And that's a big thing. And I know my wife struggled for many years of how can I trust what a pastor says from the pulpit and take it as truth when he's telling me to do the exact opposite behind closed doors, if you so would. So I know there's a lot of examples, especially in the news coming out within the past 5-6 years of molestations in the church. Now, I use the church word loosely there because a lot of that comes from our Catholic brothers and sisters. And I'm assuming if they're doing that they probably aren't true believers, those who are doing that in the leadership. But I know that there's a lot of other instances where things may have not been handled right. You guys listened to a few episodes ago, Paul Lindgren, the guest we had on, kind of tell his story and how he was kind of outcasted by the church after his affair, even though he came to true repentance, and how he felt that some parts of that weren't dealt with in the right manner. And I think that maybe that's something that we struggle with as a church. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been here looking on my phone because you're talking kind of reminded me of a situation where, not me personally, but in the youth pastor sphere, I'm in about 3 different youth pastor groups, and one of them posted this pastor who, I won't say his name, but it's all over the internet. He's an independent fundamental Baptist guy who will roast people from the platform. Like, I'm talking,
pointed them out.
Like, I have the video pulled up, and they posted it like 2 months ago, so I don't remember the exact words. But basically, it's the fact of this kid was falling asleep in church, which guilty. But you watch this man preach, it's like he's super loud, screaming, his whole body's shaking the whole entire service. So it's like he's not entertaining, he's just creepy. But this kid fell asleep, and this pastor called him out, did all this, called his parents out that they aren't parenting right because their kid's obviously falling asleep in church, and then went to the point of the fact of he's a rich, spoiled brat who doesn't know anything about, from the pulpit, rich, spoiled brat doesn't know anything about life. If he would have went to the other school across the tracks, he'd be killed. And there's a lot of other things with the fact of from the pulpit, and there's other stories too of people who pastors would call things out on the pulpit in front of everybody, make people cry, do this, never go back to church again, all these different things. And, as a pastor, as a communicator, it's one of those things where obviously as I'm talking to my people, there's different things that are going to come up,
Right.
Different situations, different things. And I never want to preach at anyone. In my opinion, if I don't have the guts to talk to someone in their face, I'm not going to preach at them from the pulpit.
Right.
But at the same time, we got to talk about truth. And there's that hard balance. And I don't think some people understand that sometimes the pastor's not calling you out. It's just calling sin out from the pulpit, from what the passage is saying of what Jesus talks about, like greed, for example. The fact of this was the last sermon I preached in Big People Church. It was about greed and the fact of we always want more and more and more and more, and that's when I used the Lord of the Rings opening and how if there was no such thing as greed, the Lord of the Rings wouldn't have existed. Mm-hmm. And
if he would have just thrown the ring,
he would have just thrown the ring away. And then if Gollum would have, Smeagol at that time wouldn't have killed his friend, and then Frodo and Bilbo and all these different things, like the ring caused greed and it turns man's heart. But if we're talking about the greed that we have as Americans, where we have to have more and more and more and do whatever we want, well, there could be someone sitting in the audience going, crap, is he telling everyone? Is he telling everybody my story?
Yeah.
He's spilling the tea on me. When in reality, it's not true. But I think there's a difference between standing at the pulpit, standing on a pew, pointing at somebody and going ham on them.
Yeah,
it's different than just calling sin a sin.
Well, and it's not even just leadership in the church. Christians in general to each other can cause major hurt. I think that I think some of the things that were here was manipulation. I was abused. Those don't necessarily have to happen by leadership.
No. But sometimes, sadly, you hear of church pastors, and honestly, there was one in Northwest Indiana where the pastor took a minor across state borders, did the unthinkable, all these different things, and now he's rotting in a jail cell. Right. He was lead pastor of a massive church in Northwest Indiana.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things that can be said about that. One, are they truly a believer, or are they just playing church? And if they are, we have to try to remember when we're dealing with each other that we're all imperfect humans that are trying to learn God's heart, and we probably mess up more than we get right. It reminds me of Romans 7:15 through 23, where Paul talks about for what he's doing, he doesn't want to do, and the things that he does want to do, he's not doing. Basically talking about his walk, that sin is still prevalent in his life, but it's not who he is, because his identity is in Christ.
Yeah, and he talks about in that passage right there. I pulled it up too. It's talking about the fact of the different parts in his body is waging war.
Right.
Like it's a fight for him.
Right. And so we have to remember that we're not we're our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities, and the things that we, as a true Christian, as a true believer, the things we struggle with is we're struggling against the flesh. The spirit and the flesh are contradicting each other. There's a lot of things that my flesh wants that my spirit does not want. Like me, my flesh wants cake, but my spirit says that, hey, you're pretty chubby. So
no, your scale says.
Well, that too.
So let's real talk this then, dude. So not about cake. I mean, we could real talk about cake all day, but
sorry, that bad example.
No, I'm hungry now. I want cake now. Cake sponsorship, anybody? But no, but real talk. I mean, you talked about your wife, but is there? And then I'll go if you want me to. But has there ever been a time where the church has hurt you?
Sure. As you know, Mark, and I think I mentioned this in our previous podcast, but I grew up in a house church.
Yep.
And in my early...
And if people are just listening, basically a house church is a group of believers who don't meet at a corporate church. They just meet in someone's house.
They believe in trying to get back to the New Testament church where they met in houses and lived life together.
Right. Yep.
That'll be a future. I've already got our friend Paul Lindgren lined up to come talk about that at some point. So,
and I'm ready to have that conversation because I'm not quite a house church guy.
Yeah, so it'll be a good conversation.
It'll be a good one.
And I'm just going to mediate between the two of you.
Oh, I hate confrontation, bro. But anywho, so you're in the house church.
So I was in the house church in my early 20s, and my walk was already starting to slip. I've had this conversation with...
episode 1.
Yeah, with that and with teens and
Yep.
My walk was very much slipping. My relationship with God was slipping because of sin in my life. But I was still attending, and there was a night at this particular meeting at this particular house. And I won't say names because I don't like to church bash. But it's a little bit more freeing and open, and there would be times where we'd be like reading scripture or talking or praying, and we'd be playing like light music behind it.
Oh yeah, that chill vibes. I've done youth group.
Yeah. So. It was one of those moments where we were in prayer, and I was really crying out to God and just kind of playing my guitar. And the prayer had stopped, and they had moved into a conversation, and I was playing even lighter to where, I could barely hear it, playing it. Mm-hmm. And crying out to God with the sin and how I was feeling and saying, God, I don't know what to do. And the leader of this house group, this house church, came over, and him and I have worked things out now, but this was my breaking point at this time that I ended up leaving the church over. But he came over and he said, stop playing that effing music right now. We're trying to have a discussion. And
he just dropped it.
Just right there in my ear, like nobody else heard it. And I was broken because I admired this man. I
man.
looked up to this man. This man was a father figure because, as we talked about in episode 1, during my childhood, my father wasn't a good father figure. He is now, but back then he wasn't. And so I looked to this guy as not only a friend, but as a mentor and a father figure. And to have him just come down and just, bam, just nail me with it, it broke me at that time for where I was at in my walk. And I actually put my guitar down, walked to the bathroom, and broke out sobbing for about 45 minutes in the bathroom. And I couldn't take it. I came out of the bathroom, and I said, I'm leaving. I won't be back. My guitar was still there. I told my friend Paul Lindgren, I said, if you could take my guitar home, I'll pick it up from you later. And I just walked out the door and never came back.
So
I was so hurt.
If they would have, or he, I guess, would have handled it differently.
Yeah, I mean,
was it the fact that he told you to stop? Was it how he did it? Like if he said, "Hey, dude," like
it was the words, how he did it, and the place I was at in my life, and that's a lot of this. It's where people are at in their lives. If we deal with them in a harsh manner, it could break them. It broke me. Just somebody I looked up to dealing with me like that, rather than dealing with me in the Galatians 6:1 way, where gentleness and love and restoring, and not this harshness, not this anger, hatred for what I was doing. It broke me because I looked to him in that way. And so that's where, I had experienced it, and I ended up walking away from the church. That's when I got heavy into drugs. That's when I got heavy into premarital activities.
sex.
Yeah. I moved away. I moved down to Florida just to get away from everybody, and my life fell apart. And it was a breaking point for me, but God uses everything for good because he had to allow me to make these choices to get me to a spot where I would come to true repentance. So that's my story. That's my story of how...
That's a heavy story, man.
How I had been hurt by someone in the church in the past. So, Mark, I'm going to pass it over to you.
I was wondering.
Anything? Oh, you were waiting for me to say something?
Yeah, I was trying.
Sorry,
trying to be polite.
It's
one of those things where, in all honesty, I have such a personality that it's very hard to hurt me. I don't know why. It always has been. So I look back over the past, and honestly, my story's a little different because when my dad passed away, the church were the people who stepped up. And to this day, Pastor O, still was a great mentor to me. He's back in Northwest Indiana, different Northwest Indiana pastor than the other one I mentioned.
Right.
And I actually just bumped into him the other day. I was reffing a soccer game, and he was coaching the opposing team, so that was really fun.
And you said, I'm throwing card out, red card on you right now.
No, he's too nice. That's his problem. He's too nice, too. But no, so he became a father figure, and the youth pastor that church did as well. And then when we moved back over to South Bend, my youth pastor at that time, it was still independent, fundamental, but I took everything with a grain of salt type thing, anyways.
Right.
I gave a lot of people the benefit of the doubt. In all honesty, where you're like, yeah, you know what, and I would talk to mom about it and be like, you know what, they believe a little differently about certain things, and that's okay. Like that's fine. It's preference, and I think that's part of his mom had a lot of conversations with me. But looking back, even now being on staff at a church where my pastor is also my boss,
yeah.
I haven't really been hurt by church leadership directly. Now, I will say that there's things that have influenced how I youth pastor and influenced how I do things. Like for example, I had a job in high school. My stepdad left us. Mom, she, even to this day, still works 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And so I had to work to go to college, and so I missed every Sunday night. And at that time, there was 4 services a week: Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And to go on missions trips, you were only allowed to miss X number of dates. Well, I did that in the first month. And this was over a course of a 8 months period or whatever. Right. And so now it's one of those things where it's like, as a youth pastor, I change things where it's like, I've had kids who come from divorced homes, talk to their parents, and they're like, look, I don't get them on the weekends. There's no way they're going to come to church on Sunday morning. But you know who they are. Then you know who I am. Can they still come on the mission trip? And I'm like, well, of course, because this is going to be the time where maybe if they're not saved, they can come to know Jesus. If they are saved, they can grow in their faith, make decisions. So I have changed things because of it, because everything, in my opinion, is a growing experience. But I've, since being a pastor, have been personally attacked by people in the church. I'm talking, I've had my family come after, and this isn't recent. This is a few years ago.
Right.
Actually, I would say closer to 4 years ago now. I've had people personally attack my family, come after me personally hard.
Wow.
And they did nothing wrong in their eyes, and it wasn't until I apologized for how I handled the situation that all of a sudden it became fine. And I'm like, hold up, back up.
Right.
And I've also gotten "you're the worst youth pastor in the history of youth pastor letters" and other things like that. And I know I have hurt people,
right.
and that's a hard weight to bear. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a proud person. At least, well, let me back this up. I try not to be a proud person. So coming from the church leadership standpoint, like I know I have unintentionally, and that's what I want to say, unintentionally have hurt people. And there's some people pastors who they're like, oh, this pastor just didn't know this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, you're right. That they're a pastor of over 300 people. They can't be everybody to everyone. Yep. And are you putting your hope more in the pastor more than Jesus? That's kind of my question. But no, I've been attacked personally by people in the church. And this is where my struggle is I have something called the grace button. I don't know if I've talked to you about this before.
I don't think so.
And it's my mom's personality. I learned this a couple months ago, and I asked her about it. She calls it the door. For me, you can do almost anything. Like you can sin against me, you can call me names, do anything. But I'm pretty easygoing. Like I forgive a lot, but it isn't until someone presses the grace button that I'm like, all right, you're done. And there's only been a few people in my life that have pressed that grace button. Very few people have. And my mom calls it the door. And she goes, I'll leave my door open for anybody. Physically and metaphorically. But she goes, there's only a few people who I'll open the door and say no and close the door again. She said there's only a few people that she would do that to.
Right.
And that's where my shortcoming comes in, is showing that grace and that forgiveness after my grace button gets pressed. And I'm still kind, I'm still polite, I do all these different things, but I have a different personality too. It's very hard to, unless you come at me or my kids personally, it's very hard, very, very hard for that grace button to get pressed. But I guess I'm flipping it to the pastor side, where it's as a pastor, a lot of times people don't understand that sometimes we do fail, and we know we fail. Let me back this up. Pastors are humans. We all fail. We all do our own things. We all sin. Now, Janelle's youth pastor, that was
blatant.
That's a boneheaded move. That was just dumb.
There's unintentional, and then there's blatant.
Like there's been times where I'll do something with Eli. Sorry, Eli. You might get in trouble. Where Eli and I will do something. He goes, "Is this safe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, as long as you don't tell your dad." Like. But then
you're not making yourself look good here, Mark.
But then I go up to his office and go, "Hey, Scott, just so you know, we did this. No one died. We're okay." But it's normally like Eli at the top of a 12-foot ladder trying to reach something, and it's just like, go to the very top step, or just stupid things. But there comes a line where pastors need to practice what they preach.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to make sure people know to give grace to their pastor too, and pray for their pastors, because we all carry weights that no people can imagine carrying.
That's kind of what I mean. So we've talked about kind of how the hurts have happened,
right?
And we know that there's hurts, and
we all have hurts. Let's be honest,
right,
we all have hurts,
right? And I would venture to say that if you're really truly striving after God, pastor or just regular Joe Schmo, that if you hurt somebody, it's unintentional. So give the grace that somebody who's hurt you it's probably unintentional. At least
you would hope that it was unintentional.
Yeah, and when we hurt each other, it's not a good thing. We're all called to love each other. And 1 Corinthians 13:4-13, is the love chapter. It's where love is described. I won't go into reading the whole thing, but I'll go ahead and give a quick reference to those of our listeners. You guys will know it as soon as I start saying it. It's love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, love does not brag, it is not arrogant, and so on and so forth. It describes for us what love is, and again, we have to show grace and mercy and forgive, just like grace and mercy is shown to us and forgiveness is shown to us by God. I think Pastor Scott, we talked about it this last Sunday.
Yep, I just pulled it up.
He keeps stealing our podcast stuff. I don't know how he must have got a hold of my show notes or something. I mean, because he preached straight out of the same text that I pulled up for us, which is Matthew 18:21 through 35, where Peter comes to Jesus and asks him how many times he should forgive his brother. Should he forgive him 7 times? And I love how Scott presented this message. Most people are like, what's 7? And it's like, what did he say? Most times it was
in Jewish customs.
3 times. Was that what it was? I don't
remember the number, dude. So, but if you want to go back and listen, it was the Missing Pieces series, week 3. Well, week 4 is what we're talking about right now, but he also talked about this in week 3. But yeah, there was only a certain amount of times
I think it was
that
3
a Jewish
or 4.
man had to, man, woman, whoever, had to forgive. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was 3 or 4. So Peter thought by saying 7, it was like, man, it was 3 because 7, I was sitting there thinking, oh, it's double plus 1. So he's like, I've given him double plus. And
it's Peter, so we know Big Bad Peter is going to be like, yo, Jesus, so...
Yeah, he's like, man, I am so
look at me go.
Yeah, I'm so good because I did it double the time I was supposed to. And that's when Jesus said, I say to you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7, which is, we know, 490. We're like, cool, 490. That's the number we always stick with. But Scott really illustrated that it's not about that 490 number in that culture back then. That you might as well have said infinity.
Yep.
He was just using that 70 times 7 because Peter had said 7.
Right.
And so
he would take that 7, multiply by another 7. Hey, add another 0 at the end of that.
Right. Exactly. So, but he goes into where Jesus starts to illustrate in that passage of how a master or Lord had a manservant who owed him, 1,000 talents?
It was like
10,000 talents.
Like a year's wage.
No, I thought it was more than that.
Either way, he owed him a crap load.
He owed him
he owed him a lot.
I think I'm trying to remember what he said. Scott kind of broke it down and illustrated it. I think it was 10,000 talents, which was like, with inflation, is just an astronomical unknown number. I think because he said like a quadrillion or something. He said that's what Scott said during his sermon, and his master, he pleaded and begged with his master to give him time, and he would get him the money. And his master forgave him, and after that, then he went and sought out another servant who only owed 100 denarii, and I think that was like a year's wage because I think a denarii.
No, that was a week. A denarii
week?
was a week's wages.
1 denarii, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was 100 denarii. So that's 100 weeks' wages. And he grabbed him by grabbed him by the neck or the throat.
By basically like the collar and like stood him up against the wall.
And threw him in prison. And then, so that's what the story that I'm sure everybody listening has probably heard of it.
It is in Matthew 18. We did mention that.
Yeah, Matthew 18.
Yep.
What was I said? 21 through 35, I think it said.
21 through 35, yeah. So the guy had owed a lot, was forgiven by the king, all his debt, went out and found the guy who owed him just nothing in comparison, and didn't show any forgiveness.
Right.
And then the servants went and told the king, and the king's like, how dare you?
Yeah. How could you?
Like, how dare you?
I forgave you this massive, unsurmountable amount, and you do this to this guy who owes you like nothing compared to what you owe me.
Yeah, and so what that's trying to illustrate is more the fact of, by God, we've been forgiven so much. And so it's like when we don't forgive people for their shortcomings, it's kind of like, really? And I don't want people to you need to forgive my shortcomings, Chris. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's the flip side.
But
I've been forgiven so much. So when someone sins against me, that even fails in comparison. Whether and I know my mouth gets me into trouble a lot, but like if someone does something against me, why shouldn't I forgive them?
Well,
when we know how much we've been forgiven and what it cost God.
And it should be done without even them apologizing. I mean, it should just be natural. And I know we all have growing to do. I have myself. I have to learn this as we're talking about it too, that if Mark sinned against me, I don't have to wait for Mark to come and try to rectify the situation. I'm called to forgive as I have been forgiven. The Bible and God does not say, wait till that person comes back to you and apologizes and is really sorrowful before you forgive them. It says, forgive as you have been forgiven.
And I've told teens this because, I'm a smart aleck and I say things like, hey, if I cross the line with anything, please come tell me, because I'll be honest, I have no clue that I did that. And Scott even mentioned it in the sermon. And I want to say this, if someone sins against you, what does the Bible say? Well, Jesus says, back up a little bit, Matthew 18, where you just go to the person and you say, look, and I love how Scott presented it, where it's like, okay, so Chris, you might not have realized this. Help me understand. I think that's the main takeaway is if someone sins against you and they might not even know it, seek to understand and know what was going on. Because if you're seeking to understand, it's not hey, you did this against me, and I can't believe you did this against me, and blah, blah, blah. Now you sound like a Republican going out a Democrat. When in reality, that low voice. But in reality, it's the fact of, Chris, help me understand, when you did this, I perceived it this way. Is that
correct?
Is that the way you interpret it? And if someone goes, yeah, well, it's you don't turn around and go, oh, yeah, you douche. You don't turn around and say that to their face. But it's more the fact of, and hopefully if you don't like that word, I apologize. There you go. Forgive me. But it's the fact of help me understand. This is what it came across. And most people are like, dude, I had no idea. Right. I am so sorry. Please seriously forgive
most
me
caring
for that.
People.
Yeah, and those who have the heart of Jesus and who understand it. And as brothers and sisters in Christ, they should. But at the end of the day, this is the two challenges I want to give to people with this is if someone hurts you, go to them, get some guts and go to them and say, hey, help me understand, making sure I understand this. But at the same time, when someone does sin against you, don't turn around and gossip. Don't turn around and slam people down. I mean, we're called to forgive even if they don't, like you said, don't seek forgiveness.
Right. Yeah, I would think, to add on, the wrong things to do in types of situations where leadership or just a brother or sister in Christ has hurt you is to let it pass, to just take it and not do anything about it.
Let it go.
Well, not even just let it go, but like you were just saying, go to him. If it's bothered you, go and talk to him. If you don't feel comfortable doing it by yourself, take somebody with you. Take your spouse. Take your
and sometimes
mother,
it's worth asking.
Father.
Sometimes is it worth asking? In your opinion, do I even need to approach that person?
It depends on how much it bothers you.
Yeah.
If you called me a numbskull right now,
I don't use that word.
You know me, I'm old school. You called me a whippersnapper, but
no. If I called you a boneheaded idiot.
Yeah, or whatever. No, no, but yeah. If you said something like that, me personally, this is just for me. It wouldn't bother me that much, and I'd be like, okay, I mean, he must be having a bad day. But for some people, that might really, really bother them. For me, I can let it go. But somebody else that it really bothers you, you need to go talk to that person because you might have been just joking around, Mark, saying it. And not really mean anything by it, but just teasing. But you didn't know how it hurts, how it hurt this person. And if you go talk to them, they're aware of that. And most people who care, when they're aware, don't do it again.
And some people, let's be honest, need to grow some thicker skin. Let's just throw it out there. But at the same time, as Christians, if we're called to love our brothers and sisters, loving people is putting them above.
I don't
see front of us.
I'm going to disagree with your thicker skin because I don't see that anywhere in the scripture.
No. Well, I see like I've seen teenagers who have they're playing catch the football. Oh, dude, come on, Butterfingers, catch the football, and that struck them to the core, and it's like.
Yeah, but why? And that would be my question: is why?
Insecurities.
Yeah. Okay. So, how can we help you through that?
Right.
And not. Well, I'm going to keep name calling you. Even though you're insecure, to try to thicken your skin up a little bit. I think we need to be sensitive because everybody's in a different place in their walk, and we have to be aware. And we have to take care and shepherd and come alongside with our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. And
understanding how they because if you call me a Butterfingers, I'll that's funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, we razz each other all the time. That's pretty much a daily.
I mean, if you come to our small group, you're screwed. We go at each other.
Our small group thought that I was being really mean to you a couple times, and they called me out for it. And you're like, we're just joking around. This is like us every day. I'm like,
normal.
Yeah, but see how it could be perceived by other people, even though you and I have this relationship that. I'd razz you, you razz me, and it goes back and forth, and we just have fun with it because we know we both love each other and care about each other, and that's our.
And when push comes to shove,
yeah. If you're having a bad day, I'm not going to come over and call you a what is it? What was the? I'm thinking of Buddy the Elf right now.
Buddy the Elf.
Yeah, what is it called? He says this funny thing. He calls somebody this funny phrase, and I forget what it is. Anyways,
all I know from that movie is Buddy the Elf. What's your favorite color? Like that's the only line I know from that movie.
Okay. Well, anyways, he says something funny, and it's like a name to somebody, and yeah. It's whatever.
so let's land this plane.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when people in the church hurt you, whether it's a pastor or not, as Christians, we're called to go to that person. And I don't remember what verse it is. It might be somewhere in James, but it's the fact that we're supposed to go to them lest bitterness destroys us.
I always think of Yoda. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. So fear, if you're afraid to go talk to somebody because of how they hurt you,
it leads to anger.
Leads to anger, which leads to hate.
Hating that person.
Which leads to suffering on your part because you're not affecting them at all.
Right. And honestly, they're living blissfully unaware because they have no idea what's going on. So if someone does sin against us, we are, for lack of a better word, called to go to that person.
Yeah. And
in my opinion, and this is just words of wisdom, it's more the fact of seek to understand.
Yeah.
Try to help the person understand, like, hey, did I interpret this correctly?
Right. I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that sometimes you're not able to go to that person. There might be, too much. Like, I'll give you an example. Had my dad and I never reconciled our relationship from my childhood, say he passed away or I passed away, I can't go and approach him and talk to him about it like I have. So that's where that forgiveness comes in. We're called to forgive. We're called to forgive infinitely. And so we need to do that and not only for the other person, but mostly for ourselves, so we don't grow that bitterness in our heart and that anger and hate.
And I want to end it with two thoughts besides all the other thoughts that we've had the last 40 minutes. But, when people tend to walk away from the church or they walk away from Jesus because the pastor hurt them, my question is what pillar were you resting on for your Christian faith? Yeah. Were you resting on the pastor pillar? Were you resting on the people pillar, or the fact of, if people cause you to walk away from Christianity, there's an old quote where if people cause you to walk away from Christianity, you weren't a part of Christianity, you were part of something different.
Yeah.
But if your hope rests on who Jesus is and who God is, where even though the church still hurts you, yes, you're suffering, you need to find a place to recover. At the end of the day, your faith isn't based on people; it's based on Jesus. And George Barna, I'm going to steal your quote here, Fuller, because I know you put it down here. It says, "In the midst of the emotional and spiritual upset that occurs when a church hurts or disappoints us, we tend to lose sight of the fact that the local church is merely a collection of people on a challenging journey." A group of people that are involved in long-term transformation process. In other words, we're all on a journey. We're all getting there. We're not there yet. We ain't going to be there yet till Jesus comes back or we die.
Right.
Hopefully Jesus come back soon. I'd prefer that a lot more right now in today's day and age. But we're all on a journey. We're all broken people trying to get somewhere. And in the same way that, when my kids grow up, when Evie hurts Elliot or Elliot's hurt Evie, and that even happens now, at the end of the day, you're still brother and sister, so let's figure this crap out. Let's figure this out where the fact of, you know what, your literal brother hurt you. He's still your brother. Let's figure out how to work together. And normally when you figure things out, your relationships get stronger too.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I would mic drop, but we don't have enough money to buy a new microphone.
No, that was good.
No, but if you have any more thoughts, I want to end it this way. If you have any more thoughts on this conversation, things you agree with, disagree with, feel free to let us know, man. The conversations never end.
Yeah.
Never
We're always
end.
open.
But this conversation is coming to a close because it is now time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
Fun facts. All right. Fun fact today.
Oh.
Because I already mentioned cake, I'm going to mention another sweet treat. So I'm a chubby kid.
We just had Halloween. Now we have, actually, I want some Skittles. I'm going to jack Elliot Skittles in a second.
I'm about ready to make you want something else.
Uh-oh.
Did you know it takes exactly 364 licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop?
No.
A group of engineering students at Purdue University designed a machine to answer the classic question, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? and they found the answer was 364. For what it's worth, there's still debate over this question. A doctorate student at the University of Michigan determined the answer to be 411, while a group of students at Swarthmore Junior High School determined it to be just 144. Are you hungry yet?
Elliot does have some Tootsie Pops in his little Halloween basket that he would know if they disappeared. But the question is it worth it? And we have PhD students trying to figure out.
Yeah.
They're wasting their heart.
You know,
if you're that smart, that talented, you got a PhD in Michigan, go do something else besides figure out how many.
All I know is Mark just said he's got Tootsie Pots here.
Tootsie what?
Tootsie Pots? Is that what it?
I don't roll that way.
Tootsie roll.
I'm not about that life.
Pops.
No. Would Jesus smoke pot? No. Would Mark do Tootsie Pot? No. Nope, I would not.
Tootsie Roll Pops is what I was trying to say. You got a little tongue twisting.
Yep.
But if you guys want to come over and continue to this theory, he will gladly take your $40,000 tuition per year and let you eat all of his Tootsie Roll
Pops. I will let
Pops.
you eat my son's Tootsie Pops in front of him if you give me $40,000 right now. But on that note, I'm gonna go get some candy. I don't know about you, Fuller.
Yeah, I can't partake in that Halloween candy.
That was a good episode too. All right, signing off. See you guys later.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Real Talk Christian. To help get our podcast into the ears of other people who need to hear these conversations, we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. To keep the conversations going, feel free to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and share our content with others. See you next time.
But no, so this coffee is from, making sure I get this right, Marquette, Michigan, and it's called Dancing Crane Coffees.
I believe it's pronounced Marquette.
Marquette, it's up in the UP, that's all I know. But this is what's cool about it. So it was, it's actually in Scandia, Michigan, which I don't know where that is. It's got to be somewhere up there.
It's in the UP.
Yeah, it's in the UP. That's all I know. But this is Fair Trade coffee, in case anybody's curious. It is a dark roast, and it was roasted 3 weeks ago. Or less than a month ago.
It's the smoothest coffee I've ever drank.
Oh, dude, it's so good.
There's
no bitterness?
No. It doesn't kick you at all. It's just a smooth, gentle coffee.
The thing I wish it did, though, I like it when coffees tell me what to expect. Like you go to Starbucks and you have the row of the wall of coffees, and they're like, this one has dark cocoa, this one has light cocoa, this one has maple, this one has this blend or whatever. I don't know what this has got.
No, but it's delicious. It's probably better than Starbucks, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Well, Starbucks coffee itself isn't the greatest thing in the world.
They over-roast it to preserve it.
Intentionally. But the beans are still oily when we grounded them up fresh tonight.
Yeah, they're delicious.